Look at verse 2. It says, through whom also we have access by faith into this grace in which we stand, and rejoice in hope of the glory of God. So benefit number 2 that we have before us is that we have access by faith into this grace that we stand. So one of the great benefits you and I have is that we in Christ have access to the Father. You have access to the Father. Well, think about the simple fact that before you came to know Jesus, you had no access to the Father. You could never stand before the Father in your pre-Christ life. But now, through faith in Jesus, you can regularly enter the presence of the Father. And one of the scriptures that best illustrates this access to the Father that is found in Jesus Christ was when Jesus was on the cross. In Matthew chapter 27, verses 50 and 51, it says this, it says, and Jesus cried out again with a loud voice and yielded up his spirit. Then behold, the veil of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom, and the earth quaked, and the rocks were split. Now, the veil of the temple that's being spoken of here, it was a thick curtain that was found between a place called the holy place in the temple and the place called the holiest of holies. And to enter into the holiest of holies, only one person had access, and it was only once a year. And it was the high priest, and when he came in, he had to give an offering of blood. And so they would come in and they would splatter blood on the mercy seat. But you and I, if we said, hey, I want to enter into the Holy of Holies, guess what? Access denied. But when Jesus died, that curtain or that veil was torn from top to bottom, and it signified that in Christ and through Christ, anyone that wanted access to the throne room of God could now enter through his blood that was offered for us. It signified that humanity can now have a relationship with the Father. And Hebrews chapter 4, verses 14 to 16 makes it the easiest to understand, I think. Hebrews 4, 14 to 16. It says, seeing then that we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus the Son of God, let us hold fast our confession. For we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but was in all points tempted as we are, yet without sin. Let us therefore come boldly to the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. So because of Jesus, you and I can have regular access to the throne of grace. Now that's an interesting thing to think about, that as we enter the Father's presence, that grace is freely and abundantly given. And I'm so thankful that in Jesus there is abundant grace to be found. Not just to save me from my sins, but there's a throne of grace that you and I can stand in, or we can stand next to, or we can approach. Now, grace is to receive that which we cannot earn. It is to receive the riches of God that Jesus has paid for. Grace is not just for salvation. It's a place that we can stand. We have access to an endless supply of the grace of God in our lives. And I think it's oh so important for you and I to remember that as we come to Jesus by grace through faith, that we must remain in a place of standing in grace through faith. Remember earlier in Romans, Paul said, the just shall live from faith to faith. So we come by faith, we remain in faith, we move into eternity by faith.